get some reaction to what Bill Morneau just told us from the Conservative finance critic Pierre Poilievre, who joins us now. All right, deficit's $343 billion, debt over $1 trillion. They say it all has helped at least keep this economy on track. What's your take on the fiscal quote-unquote snapshot?
Well, if you compare it to the rest of the world, this government has spent the most to achieve the least. And let me just refer to the stats. The document the government released today showed that the cost of its COVID response programs was higher than in any other country in the G7. And simultaneously, our unemployment is higher than any other country in the G7, in many cases, much higher. In other words, the design and the mismanagement of numerous of these programs are actually suppressing economic activity and preventing people from getting back to their economic lives.
Well, let's talk about that. You know, what program, the 8 million people availed themselves of the CERB. One of the things that Mr. Morneau said today is we're going to actually extend the wage subsidy to the tune of $82 billion. Are you against either the CERB or the wage subsidy, the two biggest programs?
We want to fix both. Both of them ban people from improving their economic lives. Let me give you an example. If you earn $1 more than $1,000, you lose your CERB. In other words, folks who are being asked to go in and take an extra couple of shifts a week at their employer could actually lose the CERB as a result of earning just $1,200 or $1,300. Nobody would give up $2,000 to earn $1,000. It would be one step forward and two steps back. So what we as Conservatives are proposing is a back-to-work bonus. Give people a bonus on their earnings between $1,000 and $5,000 a year, so that everyone is always better off earning that extra dollar or taking that extra shift. Same with the wage subsidy. Businesses are required to keep their revenues down 30% compared to last year, or they lose their entire wage subsidy. That forces many businesses to artificially suppress their sales. We believe that the benefit to the business should be phased out gradually as they recover their revenue. These changes would effectively would turn these programs into more of an economic liftoff rather than an economic suppressor.
Well, remember, it was not a bug, but a feature of these things. They were trying to keep people at home in the first number of months of the pandemic. So this is not, maybe they're victims of their own success on that, but I'm just trying to appreciate, you want this CERB extended and reformed. No. You want the wage subsidy extended and reformed. But how do you have government spending money on these programs and then complain that the deficits are too high? How do you have it both ways?
We don't. We're not proposing extensions. We're proposing to remove the penalties that prevent businesses and workers from earning income. By removing those penalties, you allow people to go back to work. You reduce the amount that they would rely on the government, and you increase the taxes that they would actually pay on those increased earnings. The way out of this, Evan, is to unleash our 20 million Canadian workers and the million businesses that employ them to produce income again, so that we can get our economy back on track before the government bankrupts itself. So we're proposing a pro-growth agenda to get people and businesses firing on all cylinders.
How worried are you about this deficit? The government, and I just talked to Bill Morneau, he said, look, while the debt to GDP ratio is now closing in on 50%, 49%, these are unprecedented levels. But he said, look, compared to anybody in the G7, any other country, our debt to GDP ratio is among the best, way better than others. Does it worry you, these levels?
Well, Bill Morneau is wrong, because our debt to GDP ratio is the second highest in the G7 if you take into account both public and private debt. Household, corporate, and government debt combined was 3.5 times the size of our economy before COVID struck, and it's going to be much higher afterwards. So if you think of our $2.3 trillion economy as a horse, it's carrying on its back a weight that is 3.5 times bigger than the horse itself. And that is unsustainable. When interest rates finally go up, and they will, because the Bank of Canada can't keep printing money forever, we're going to be in a terrible position, potentially even in a debt crisis.
Well, they don't seem to be troubled by the deficit. He said he's locked in long-term deficit, quote, at historic lows. Okay, outside of what you're talking about, reforming the CERB to allow people to both take some help and incentivize them back to work, what else struck you about this document? Was it, did it answer enough of the key questions for you?
Well, here's all you need to know. The Auditor General's office got $0 new dollars. Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister's office, got 15 million new dollars per year. So she gets this gigantic new political staff. It's about 150 staffers paid six-figure salaries, Evan. And the Auditor General, who is falling behind on her audits and can't keep up to scrutinize the 600 billion in new spending, she gets absolutely nothing. And you can appreciate why they wouldn't want the Auditor General to get funded. After all, we know the WE controversy represented a misappropriation of almost $1 billion. We know that they've been sending CERB checks even when fraud is detected, or they've sent them to prisoners in jailhouses. So they don't want any scrutiny of the way that they're spending money. And so the only institution, Evan, in the entire government of Canada that's not being funded today is the Auditor General.
All right, I got to leave it there. Pierre Poilievre, disappointed with the outlook today, or the snapshot, if we're going to use that word. Mr. Poilievre, good to have you on the program. I appreciate it.